It is Monday, the 27th of Rabi al-Awwal, 1445, and the 11th day of December 2023. I once again want to welcome you to this Alhidaayah show on Salam TV, and it comes your way every week, same time 3 to 4. This program, it is very dedicated on science and technology, in regards to how Islam views science and technology and the contributions that Muslims have done and what we ought need to do if we have to, to add at least a brick in the field of science and the technology. So we have been looking at a number of things. It has been a series of items that we have looked at ever since we started these programs, and we think that if you could have missed any, you can go to our Salam TV YouTube channels and be able to to watch those that you have missed. Perhaps when you do, you can be able to catch up with this program. In the studio, I have my brother Sekalema Hamza, who is a lecturer at Islamic University in Uganda. Allow me to invite him to say salam to you, then I will be starting our program, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, having heard that, our usual suspect on this program is already in the studio, we are going to start right away. I'm your host, Brother Menya Ayub Kibedi, to take you through this program. So, Brother Hamza, we have been looking at a number of things in the theme of science and technology, and we are at a level where we are looking at safety, especially in the transport sector. And when you look at our transport in Uganda, especially if we want to localize it, here in Uganda, the most used means of transport, we have taxis, we have border borders, the buses, and people are still riding even the bicycles. So really, as a matter of getting to, to a reason as to why what we want to talk is that important, why should we at this point in time have to focus on fast trains that as a topic that we are going to look at this evening?
Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Now, regarding the issue of fast trains, we are looking mainly at the safety ratio. If you compare trains with any other means of transport, you realize that the ratios are very small. Yet trains do carry very large numbers of people. I'm looking at statistics of train transportation, and I find that in Europe you have billions of people. This one is a video that shows us the structure of these very fast trains. You can see the cabin is very comfortable. It is nearly aircraft level in terms of comfort. So meaning, apart from the fact that these trains are very efficient in the way they carry so much in terms of traffic, they are also considerably comfortable. Remember, the railroad does not have things like potholes. And because they have a very small metallic line, it's not very difficult to maintain. It's not as wide as a road that you would need. So you'll find that there's no country anywhere in the world that has grown unless that it has a very properly organized railway transportation system. And when I was doing my research, I found that all these countries, the railway network is managed by government. Because you realize in some places you would think this would be private sector, but I found that all the major railway transportation systems are managed by government entities. I think the investment is very big in terms of where they pass and etc. So it's not easy for a private company
I think
to be able to acquire that kind of resource.
Beyond being expensive, I think from the economic point of view, some of the things that are meant to be used by, almost all the people. If you try to privatize it, then you are leaving your people, your population, to be exploited in one way or the other. Mostly government entities, assumably, are meant to protect, their citizens in one way or the other. So if you have so many things that affect the people and they are privatized, then you are bound to exploit your population. And that is the rationale as to why so many that affect the people, like, say for example, if in other countries, things like water and like that are usually used by almost the people, it is something that should be government owned. So I think even the rationale. Yeah.
Okay, so if we look at the EU is the European Union, which is a large area that has many small countries there. Actually, the countries in Europe are usually very small. Some like Luxembourg, like maybe half of Kampala or something. Very small countries, but they have a fairly large population. Now, if you look at statistics of usage of rail transportation in that region, remember Europe is well ahead of us here. So we wouldn't think that they are intentionally using rail transportation without having done a proper calculation of the advantages that it offers, both in safety and capacity to move very large numbers of people. So by 2015, they were already having 380 billion people moving annually. So we are not talking of millions, we are talking of billions. So the number by 2019 was around 420 billion. COVID came, the number dropped. But even when it dropped, it was 220 billion. Then now they are shooting back to normal. Meaning a country like Uganda that nearly has no mentionable railway network has no chance of development. Because that one is a prerequisite. Transportation is very important, but it should be, first of all, efficient. People should not spend a long time just moving from one place to another. Then two, it should be safe. Now, we don't have both of those now, as we speak. Intercity or intracity, you are talking of border, a very dangerous form of transportation. But for Uganda's case, we don't have much choice, because if you sat in a taxi, then the entire day is gone. You will sit there and wait until you get disoriented, and possibly you will jump out and again use the very border you're trying to avoid. Actually, the border numbers are so high that some Nigerian visited Uganda and he posted on social media that he was disgusted by the number of Okadas that he saw on the roads. But maybe he didn't know what they were doing. Those Okadas were taking people to where they needed to go fast enough.
Exactly.
So meaning, one, you've compromised on safety by this bike. Then two, the numbers are very small that you move. So in the end, you have all this time that is spent in the jams. Imagine if you were to depart from here and you are going to just a place like Mbale, which is a mere 250 kilometers. Usually we spend between 5.5 to 6 hours. How long does
now that Ginger Road is under reconstruction,
it becomes even worse. So a country that does not have an efficient way of moving very large numbers of people, that country has a major bottleneck to its development. So the good thing, the government is now moving towards re-establishing the railway system, but that one should have been done way back. Otherwise, it is like moving in a sack. If you are already in a sack, it means there is a certain maximum speed you can move at. However wise or whatever you may be, you are already having a means that prevents you from moving efficiently. So that is one thing that we should not. To show you how fast this, we've already seen the safety. These trains are very safe. Out of maybe 10, 15 years, you may find only one accident. having occurred. Of course, due to the large numbers, the accidents tend to kill a bit of a number of people, but that number is far smaller than the normal people that die out of the usage of roads. So if you are to look at these trains and how fast they can go, we shall begin with the we shall look at them in terms of kilometers per hour. The very first one we shall look at, which is having the smallest speed, is in Italy. Maybe the selector can show us the image of that train. So this is a Trenitalia. Trenitalia is a train service that is managed by the Italian government. Like we said, these things. So Trenitalia, that one there, you can see how beautiful these trains appear. Part of the design is nearly like an aircraft because they move very fast. So Trenitalia moves at 300 kilometers per hour.
So meaning from here to Mbale, you take like 45 minutes.
So that is what you would take. Of course, since you have some stoppages to pull people out a little bit, you may just add another 20 minutes and you are sure that within 1 hour you have moved, meaning you can even be able to work in Mbale but residing in Kampala, and you have no problem because the travel is 1 hour. So that is one.
After all, from here to where you go, you use 3 hours.
Yet this very high speed train will take you there, and remember it has very many coaches attached to it, so you have very many people seated in there very comfortably, like we saw in the earlier video. You have very comfortable seats in there, and the train is able to move. The next one, which is a bit faster than that, is the Korail. Korail is a Korean managed train system. So Korail, that one added some 5 kilometers per hour. You can see the designs are essentially the same. And all these countries have injected enormous amounts of money into these train systems to ensure that you can move very large numbers of people in a very short time. The next one, which is the fastest, of course there are many others. You'll find China has the biggest network of high-speed trains, but the last one, which is Chinese, is the Shanghai Maglev. Now that Shanghai Maglev moves at 460 kilometers per hour.
Wow.
Meaning going to Mbale, isn't it like
around 35 minutes.
30 minutes. So that is how fast that maglev is. And because of the technology marvel behind this maglev, we are going to look a bit deeper into the detail of how does one achieve 460 kilometers per hour on a railway system. So all the other trains that we have seen, they move on the rail, meaning they have wheels that touch the rail, although the engine technology is very efficient, so they move very fast, up to 360 kilometers per hour. But this one here, which moves at 460, it has a different mechanism of operation. So it uses a technology that we call magnetic levitation. Now, magnetic levitation, instead of you relying on this rail where the train sits on the rail and it has to overcome friction in order to move, this technology here is different. The reasoning is derived from the principle of magnets. And by the way, this is one thing that we should note about the way we study here in Africa relative to other countries. Now, we all know principles like, unlike poles attract, like poles repel. So these things are sung in the science classes here, but there is no application. It's just, it is just a hymn that people sing. Yet those are some of the things that are used in this technology here. So you see that first picture there. The rail itself is a magnet. Then the train also has another set of magnets that are attached to it. So when they want the train to begin moving, they simply switch on power, and the power creates very strong magnets within the rail line and within the train. Now, because because of the principle of repelling, the train moves off the railway and hangs in the air. So at that time it becomes more like an aircraft because it's no longer in contact with the ground. Then you see this second picture.
With that kind of heaviness, it is able even
yes, because the power that is pumped there is also not very simple power. They make very strong magnets. So the train therefore is lifted off the ground by that magnetic effect. Then along the rail, they just keep alternating between north-south, north-south, like you can see that diagram there. So in that case, therefore, the train is able to move forward, being attracted by the magnetic force that is in the rail that is ahead of it. Meaning if it is counted as north now, in the front there is a south pole that's going to pull the train forward. It reaches that point and it propagates forward until it goes. So it means if they want to brake, they simply reduce the magnetic field and etc. They manage it in a very simple way like that, and they are able to achieve speeds of up to 460 kilometers per hour. And that is how this technology is made to work.
Wow.
So you can see that unlike us that are not really putting a lot of application of science and technology, people sit down and create very wonderful technology. Of course, the maglev trains have not been seen to be used in very heavy transport mechanisms, like maybe transporting containers and other very heavy elements. It is mainly applicable to human transportation, but you can be able to achieve nearly aircraft level speed, because 460 kilometers per hour is nearly aircraft level speed. So that is something that we should know about these trains. Of course, here the ones that we are going to be having, the ones that we use here in Africa, they are largely, I don't think they are any high-speed trains. The standard gauge railway, the speeds there, I think they are not very high, but still, compared to road transportation, you still get a lot more efficiency. The reason simply being, one, trains are not stopped like the way vehicles are stopped. When a train begins to move, the way is cleared.
Yeah.
So you don't have the concept of traffic jam. You don't have all these other inconveniences.
I think
that we find.
Even one major thing that trains or rail transport has over any other, except air, is to do with the bulk carrying of things. So because here we suffer a lot of this imported inflation.
Exactly.
Things come here when they are too expensive. It's because the way they are transported is quite expensive. So somebody who is a business person will have to amalgamate all that kind of cost, and it is embedded in the final cost to a consumer. So if somebody will have, so for example, 100 containers at Mombasa, those can be transported maybe at once using
a train. Yeah. But now you have to rely on the trailers.
Yeah.
So if you have 100 containers, you need a minimum of 50 in case you're having a trailer that can take 2.
Yeah, and even some are carrying one, so meaning it becomes even more cumbersome.
So it becomes a very big problem. So we are saying rail transport is very efficient in terms of the numbers of people it carries, and it is also very safe. It is not very common to hear that there is a train accident. The reason simply being that their schedules are very clearly well known, even in places where we have very busy train movements. Here maybe you may find there is only one train that is moving around, so there is no much of scheduling that is needed. But in other countries you'll find the trains do a lot of movement around, so you have to schedule them to avoid collision. And for as long as some of the systems are even automated, actually some of the people that move from here to Dubai for purposes of Cheyo, they go into that train service. They manage services in there. So that is one very important technological area that we have to be aware of. Of course, we are trying to re-establish our railway system, but we are still going to be using the normal, not very high-speed rail. But I believe that as time goes by, because once you envisage the benefits that come out of a certain technology, then the government can do the investments, and we end up with a very high speed movement.
Okay, having seen that, I think we shall have to go for a short commercial break, and when we come back we should be picking up right from there, inshallah. So don't go.
Eno, yes, Salam TV.
Explore, enjoy and dance to the latest content, beats and Kawozi from Uganda and beyond. Simply go to your Play Store or App Store right now, find Afro Mobile, download it straight to your phone and get started. Is it TV you want? Simply open the app, click on TV, select the channel you want and watch live. Are you busy right now? Then check out On Demand or enjoy in your free time. Afro Mobile. The future is now.
Oh, you can touch this. Hey, but you can test it. Ooh, but you can test it. Everybody grab a bottle and sip some. It's Mirinda time, flavors unmatched, tongue tingling, thirst quenching and bombastic. Oh, sweeter than sweet, bolder than bold. Flavors explode, making you go oh, you can test it.
There's no flavor like Mirinda, now in a fresh new look with the same great taste. Enjoy the tongue-tingling flavor of Mirinda Fruity, Orange, Green Apple, and Pineapple. Mirinda.
Uganda, a land bursting with culture and creativity, introduces an innovation for our times. Next Wowzy, a fusion of Next Media, Uganda's largest media network, and Wowzy, a leading influencer marketing platform. It's more than just a platform. It's a movement that bridges ambitious brands with vibrant content creators. Download the app today. Connect, create, influence.
Jovia ng'oyolekera ku lugendo luno olw'obulamu nkuwa ekirabo eky'amaanyi agatazizibwa, amaanyi okulabibwa n'okuwulirwa mu mawanga ag'ewala ennyo, okutuuka buli wamu nga yadde togenzeeyo, ensi yonna ng'ekuli mu ngalo. Okutambula mu biseera n'okumanya buli kimu ekirina okumanyibwa. Jovia, kino kye kirabo kyange gy'oli.
Tewali kkubo ku ki ky'osobola okukola omukutu nnandameggwa ogwa MTN.
Ffe aba NASA Recruitment Agency tukwaniriza gwe omwana ow'obuwala omunayuganda ng'olina passport yo wakati w'emyaka 21 ku 35. Jangu tukutwale e Saudi Arabia okukola nga housemaid. Wasomako, oyogera ku luzungu, jangu weewandiise naffe ogenda okole, tojja kwejjusa. Tusangibwa kyalo Wajjala ku opposite ne Mogas Petrol Station ku Muzikiti. Oba osobola okuba ku namba y'essimu 0702 334861 oba 0394 825219. Weebale nnyo.
NASA Recruitment Agency.
Eno, yes, Salam TV.
Okay, I want to welcome you once again to this Alhidaayah show. Having had that short commercial break, before we went for a break, we were explaining something to do with fast trains, how they are, they have kind of changed the face of transportation, mechanism in terms of people and the goods and like in other countries. And really, this is something we should yearn for when it comes to our countries in Africa, because when you look at the kind of advantages, they have over, using cars, using aircraft, and maybe, the tuk-tuks and that we have. The other is really massive, and, it brings kind of economies of scale when you use the trains and the entire rail system. So I think in this second segment of the hour, we want to look at, if we are seeing China, Italy, and the like that we have managed to look at, investing too much in terms of developing their rail system and the fast, moving trains. We need now to have a bigger picture that how are other countries really behaving in terms of the investment in this kind of area, because that will give us a picture whether or not we are on the verge of taking off, as they told us some years back, or we are still in slumber. So when you look at vis-a-vis our countries like Uganda and maybe this African region, how we are faring in terms of transport, in terms of research and everything, vis-a-vis what is happening, in other countries, perhaps that can give us a clear picture on how we should be moving forward in terms of making innovations and inventions, plus the investment that should be pumped within this area. So, Brother Hamza, I think in the second segment, let's have a look at what is happening elsewhere in the world in terms of development, research and technology, and investment in this field of rail transport and fast-moving trains.
Now, a number of countries are putting money and technology into this area of rail transportation. Like, remember, we saw that the major advantages are around safety and efficiency. You can move far bigger volume of both human beings and cargo using this rail transport, and it's a prerequisite to development. There's no country anywhere that has ever moved even a few steps without having a very well streamlined railway system. Even if they may not be high-speed trains, we have covered high-speed trains because for them they have a far major advantage over the normal ones, but still you have to do the investment. Now, a number of countries are putting money into this industry. For example, we have Israel is building the Tel Aviv Light Rail, which is supposed to be within the city of Tel Aviv. And that one is a 13 billion USD project. So you can see the kind of money countries that are already developed. It's not like they are trying to develop, they are already nearly there, but still they see that in order to stay stable with their economies, this is the kind of money.
And this 13 billion spread across what period of time?
Well, it is instant because they started in they're saying started in 2011, that's when the construction was started, and they are hoping to be opening in 2023. I hope the current war has not disrupted. Wars disrupt everyone. The strong and the weak are all disrupted by it.
13 billion is really good money.
And moreover, the distances are not very large because Peru is not a very large country. So they have 39 kilometers one segment, then another one is 4.5 kilometers, 62 stops. So the city-based transportation also needs to be rail. So far, we are for China and some other countries, they don't do a lot of city transportation by rail. So you'll find they also face traffic jam. If you go to a city like Beijing, you'll find the traffic jams are sometimes there. Of course, for them, they have very large roads and they try to handle it that way.
Even summer, even in
in the space, but you find that still there is a jam. Now here the Tel Aviv one is for intra-city transport, because you cannot beat jam in the city unless you are using mass transport even within the city itself, not connecting one city to another. So you can see the distances are small, but in that case, if you have a network, imagine if you had a high-speed rail connecting the major suburb areas.
Kampala metropolitan.
So you have maybe one connecting Machindie, Chibuli, Kawempe, Busega. So you have that kind of rotational mechanism where the train is able to cover that entire route in just like 10 to 15 minutes, and it keeps repeating that. And each time it goes out, it moves out with maybe 2,000 people. In that case, you are able to move very large numbers of people in a very short time without any kind of jamming. Because as you know, the other advantage of trains is the issue of emissions. Global warming is now a major problem. Actually, recently, Uganda also attended that summit that was in the Middle East. It is a major concern now. People originally ignored the whole idea of emissions and the kind of damage they do to the environment. Trains, because they have just one engine pulling a lot of things, you have a lot less emission. And if you are using electrical ones, the situation even becomes far smaller. So that is one, the Israeli one. Australia, which is another country, is now building a 90-kilometer line, and total investment is 19.4 to 22 billion USD. You can see the investments. Of course, they are building new lines, buying new trains. You require some good amount of resources, big money. Then the Tel Aviv Metro, the other one was the light rail. They also have Tel Aviv Metro. Metro usually moves at the bottom of the city because you don't want to be affected by all this inconvenience that comes from the top, especially if you have a city that has already been built. Now, like this Kampala, you're not going to make a lot of modifications to a city that is already in place. So the better way is put the railway below the city. So that's the metro. Tel Aviv Metro, 40 billion. Of course, the cost goes way higher because you have to do the underground construction work. But that is the kind of investment they are willing to put in order to improve transportation for their cities.
I think there are even some metro systems that are
above ground. So you tend to avoid the ground-based system because you will end up being delayed. Then France, there is the Grand Paris Express, which is 48 billion. The figures just keep growing. So all these old cities like Paris and the others, they had their own rail systems that you find that was old technology. Of course, for them, they saw earlier on the advantage of rail. They invested and they developed up to where they are now. But now new train technology has come and they are a lot more efficient, so you have to build new infrastructure. So Grand Paris is 48 clean billions total.
And how is it if, say, for example, I would reason maybe naively that if, say, for example, I have the startup infrastructure which can form the basis of me merely improving on what I have, than injecting in all this kind of money and I'm starting from scratch.
Now, one, you may find there are issues of infrastructure due to the technology. Most of these very high-speed trains require electricity, and the electricity is put along the rail lines themselves. You may also find the rail lines themselves are not exactly the same as the ones for the rudimentary trains that we are using. Because remember, these are very high-speed vehicles. You may find you need to expand the railway system a little bit in order to allow for that balance there. And by the way, we didn't talk about some of the very interesting features within those trains. You can see the train is moving at 300 kilometers per hour or 460. So based on our normal appreciation of very high speed moving objects, maybe if you're in a bus and the driver of the bus stops abruptly or makes a very tough corner, you tend to move around with the bus. If he stops, you are forced forward. If he moves very fast, you are. But these trains are designed in such a way that they do a balancing So for example, when they are making those corners, they don't reduce the speed in order to navigate a corner. They simply move at that very speed. That's why they are able to attain a very high velocity. But the cabin is designed in such a way that when the train is moving along the track and there is a corner, the cabin is partially lifted to compensate for that gravity that would push you in the direction that the train was moving. So the train stays as stable as possible, yet it is making all these corners, because you know very well you cannot have a rail line that is moving only forward. You tend to go through all this terrain, but they have been able to do all these modifications. Engineers can go very far in case they are challenged. Then Japan has also the Shinkansen project, which is 64.4 billion. But this one has a very big distance, 286 kilometers of high speed. For them, they are building maglev. Maglev, like we saw earlier on, is the very best of train technology. The railway does not involve contact. So the train only moves in the air just above the railway, suspended by a magnetic force. So that's what the Chinese are building. Because in that case, the Japanese are building, because you don't have all this friction. You will find you can even take years and years using the same rail line. Otherwise, when you are having all this fast speed and the train is subject to all this friction, you may find you need to replace the lines regularly. So these ones are going to be built up to 286 kilometers of high-speed magnetic levitation, or maglev, within the Tokyo to Nagoya and some of their other cities. So that's the kind of money they are injecting. The UK, which is also another country that has been using technology for the train technology for some time, is injecting 122 billion into their railway system. 122 billion. And moreover, even after these, because these are the initial estimates, but you find they also do overruns. So the original budget was 122, but you find they have gone beyond by some other bigger figures in order to be able to reach their decision. The US has been a country that relies a lot on train technology. Actually, their entire transport is driven mainly by trains and airlines. For them, they do a lot of air travel within. So for them, they're injecting 128 billion to connect some major cities like San Diego, connecting to Los Angeles, then connecting to Sacramento and San Francisco. That is mainly on the western side of the US. So these are big cities. They want high-speed connections to them, because the reason as why people are using air transportation is they want to be there fast and they don't want to sit in the vehicles for long. So if you can give them the option of moving very fast via train, then it would be something very good. So these are investments that other countries are putting into their train systems. The standard gauge rail, which was Uganda's ambitious project to try and get us off the ground, there was hope that we would receive funding from the Chinese government, but I think the talks broke down, and in the end we had to find alternative ways of funding. But there was an advantage therein, because the project was 2.2 billion compared with the others that we have.
Is it dollars or shilling?
Dollars.
Okay.
Although we survived, what we found was that the SGR was a bit overpriced by the investment coming from the Chinese government. So we who didn't manage to secure, I think we survived accidentally, because we had made the intention of adapting this as our funding agency. So we are now having to try and find other means. So we are expecting a 273 kilometer heading from Kampala to boost the country's border with Kenya. So that is the whole idea, because Uganda is a landlocked country. You rely a lot on goods coming from either Kenya or Tanzania. So there's no way you can run a proper economy relying only on the trailers as the heavy carriers. You need something that can move the goods in very large volumes and moreover efficiently, and that is the whole idea of train transportation, and that's why it needs to move forward. Unfortunately here, of course, we have the challenge of people that ended up becoming encroachers on the train routes. Some even totally disorganized the entire rail lines, and I saw even in Kampala there's still chaos. People are refusing to leave the railway line. They are claiming they want to be compensated. I don't think it is agreeable, because the rail lines are very well established public service areas. So if you come and build your structure there, then you are doing so well aware that you will potentially be sent away minus any compensation.
I think it is two-way, because just like we have land laws, say for example in Uganda, that say if somebody has been occupying a land for over a period, I think 10 years or so, then has become a bona fide occupant. There is no way you are going to chase away somebody who has been there for 30 years on a railway, reserve land. You have not acted for all that time, and now because you have come up with a project, you want to chase him or her away just like that. So I think we are being inconsistent in.
I think that law applies to private land, where Ayuba has his land and I've come and squatted on it for the 10 years. Otherwise, public land, you can't claim that you have been squatting on it for 10 years, now you require compensation. No. It's not like that. And the train land is very well known public land, and it should not be inconvenienced by issues of compensating the people that have been there. So I believe that the efforts to build a proper railway system should be supported. We have seen the technology that is behind some of what the other countries are doing. Very efficient ways of moving large numbers. In fact, the Haramain, we should have looked at it. Originally, you remember that when people would go for Hajj, there would be that horrendous bus trip between Medina and Makkah. Remember, the Hajj is a timed event. You don't just move at your own pace, and there would be incredible jams there. But now the Saudi government,
millions of people
in a very short time having to go by bus. But now the Saudi government rolled the very high speed, the Haramain railway. So you're able to move all these people in a very short time with no one getting tired even at all. So you can see how effective this is, because people really used to have a rough time in that segment. Others, some would even resort to just walking in case the distance remaining is not very big. Instead of sitting there doing nothing, you better simply walk. So that is some of the insights about this technology of train transportation. The reason why we look at this technology is to get some inspiration. Of course, we may not necessarily go to the very end like what these other countries already do have, but it's a starting point. Also, our engineering universities like Makerere and the others, some of the challenges that we would need to look at these challenges that we are having.
Localize the challenges.
You localize and try to look at things in terms of what solutions can we have that can solve some of these problems that we are having. Because for example, for now, you have this railroad, the train system that is there, and you are putting there these trucks that are already pre-designed. But is that the only way you can move on that railway? Can't we have electrical coaches that can also use the same line, and you could find you can be able to achieve the efficiency that you want without necessarily having to rely on this imported train technology that we are having? Because I believe if you really sat down and you are trying to look at the materials available and you are avoiding the use of necessarily very large engines, because the train system is expected to be multi-purpose. It is supposed to carry both cargo and passengers, so the engine is built to be a massive engine that can drag very many. But if in case I'm building something 100% dedicated for passenger transportation in a small area like this Kampala city, then we should be able to find innovative ways of moving in that direction. Otherwise, the electric buses and some of the other things that have been done, yes, they are good, but because they are now fitting into an already crowded road system, you may find that they may not achieve their intended objective. Yet you have these other options within the railway platform.
Maybe as we wind up, there is, I think, a problem to do with maybe a government will and the procurement kind of process that we go through, because from what I learned, the last time they attempted to buy coaches and, you know, the kind of whatever apparatus or equipment that we need to move on that rail system, they went and bought kind of an obsolete kind of things.
Which does not fit.
It's not compatible with what we have. So these people really should be punished, you know, for God's sake, because we are paying a lot of money, at least to kickstart our economy by having at least an efficient, you know, transport kind of mechanism, and people are just dubiously spending the money.
I think part of it is because the government has put some good money into that Chira, whatever, the locally developed technology, meaning if the universities would at least do the part of designing, because you may not have the technology to actually implement, but you can sit down and design. Because once you are done with the designing part, you can have manufacturing, the production actually done by China or any of the other.
And then you assemble.
Then you assemble from here. So I think the academicians are not doing us a very good service by simply not even getting involved at all, even at design level. Yet if they sat down and really scrutinized our current resource base, with the problem being transportation, the kind of time wasted in a jam and other inconveniencing means should be a problem that every institution that is involved in engineering, teaching and research should be really putting an effort on. And with the railway being the most efficient one, in case you actually implemented it, then it should be something that we can do. Let's do the designs, let's do, because nowadays there are even simulators. You may not necessarily implement to full before you can see how it works. You can even do simulations, and in the end, possibly the procurement may not need to be even erroneous like what you have stated, because if I've designed the thing here, of course I have to look at the current railway system I'm using. I see how best I can build my coaches. They should be able to take as many people as possible with minimal resources, and these are things that we encourage ourselves. The good thing, our IUIU is going to be starting their School of Engineering faculty. So maybe we may look at that as our starting point, so that we ensure that we add value. A country grows largely due to research and innovation, and much of it is done by institutions of higher learning, because for them they have all these students that have come, they have the zeal to learn and etc. So it should be an area where we should be able to participate.
Thank you so much, Brother Sekalima, at least for taking us through this. It has been quite a wonderful session, a wonderful kind of program. I think you could have picked one or two things. You know, our government should be able at least to watch this program and even other programs that we have made here that, you know, are informative and they can be inspiring. And maybe what I think is that government should be having these people who already know this, but for one reason, I don't know as to why some of these are not implemented, because these are very people who are traveling day in, day out, and they see how the world is, you know, moving out there. But we don't know as to why some of these things are not implemented to date. So with this, I think we shall have to end at this point, inshallah ta'ala. Until next time, Monday, the same time. We'll be able to catch up with you inshallah ta'ala. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Eno ye Salam TV. Adhan